Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update. All we have to talk about in this one is delays, and you can probably guess the two books that have been delayed because it's the two books that have been getting delayed the whole year basically. So Patterns in Time has been delayed and Chibi Volume 1 has been delayed. So both of the two Dark Horse pieces of new story content have been delayed. We'll start with Patterns in Time. Patterns in Time is now coming out 8th of November 2022. So it's been pushed back by basically a month. I think 4th of October was the previous date. It's now 8th of November. So this is kind of consistent with the way that this book has been getting delayed. Weird that that is now just a normal thing that I say about this book. It's consistent monthly delay, but that's the way it's been going. It's been delayed every month since it's been announced. And I think this is actually the second month's worth of delays that it's actually received in May. So pretty extreme things here. And obviously every time it gets pushed back, it gets closer and closer to falling out of 2022. The 10-year anniversary year that to some degree that this book was meant to sort of help to celebrate, it's 2 delays away basically from missing the year. And that would be just very disappointing for one, because it's nice to have products to celebrate big anniversaries, and Korra really hasn't had that great of a celebration of the year with regards to the amount of merchandise and stuff like that. This was something to look forward to, and there's a heavy chance it won't make it to this year because, as I bring up like every time, who's to say this is the day that they'll stick to? Like, why should you, after everything that's happened in the last few months, believe that this is actually the date it's going to come out? If they delayed into November, who's to say that's the actual date? No, it feels like nothing they can say can ever give you confidence that that is actually what the date is going to be. And then the other factor of it is just that we've known about this book for a while now, and it just gets pushed further and further back, and especially when there's not really that much new content in it. There's only so much excitement that's actually here. You are running the risk of spreading this way too far when you don't really have anything as well. So there's that. Then on the other side of things, an even worse delay. Chibi Volume 1, which I've been saying in videos that it hasn't been delayed. It's keeping to that August date. And then all of a sudden, 5 months worth of delays. This has not just been pushed back by 1 month like has been sort of usual recently. This has suddenly got a date change from August 2022 to January, end of January as well, 2023, 31st of January. So it's basically February. Very heavy delay here of basically 5-6 months. Again, for no obvious reason. And this is more egregious here because we got the preview pages in the free comic book day book, it felt like, oh, that book is now more or less locked in because I guess it's done. And now that they've committed to the date being printed in a book, they'll have to, stick to it. But no, the whole kind of point of putting the preview in there, I now feel is lost. Any benefit I think you maybe got out of that has maybe been lost now because it's nowhere near the release of the free comic book day book. And this book especially is one of the worst delayed books because it was originally scheduled for July 2023. It was announced, originally scheduled for July 2021. Announced February 2021. So this book was meant to come out relatively soon after its announcement, but it got delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. Misses 2021 as its release date, and now has missed the entirety of 2022 and is now into 2023. And again, who's to say it'll stick to this date? That's just how things are. And just from a very simple just dynamic of, we as fans see a book get announced, see a date, wait for the book on that date. You've made that now very, very complicated with what's going on here. So I'm just very confused by what's happening right now. Like I said on Twitter, I think it's getting comical at this point with these two books. For very different reasons, but similar. this book, for just being all over the place for no real obvious reason, because as far as we're aware, it's been done for quite a while now. It's like the third tier down of like important content. We now have like a preview, so like we know more officially that it's done. What's going on with this book? Why is it being pushed out of not just like last year when it was meant to be out, but pushed out of this year? What are they doing? What's the plan with this? Like, we don't even know. And again, it's just like there's very little hype behind this book, but for some reason it's being treated as like, oh no, you can't read this now. You have to wait until here. So this book getting like these sort of like chunks of delays, where it got delayed very early on a bunch of times in a row. Then it had the patterns in time thing happen to it when it was getting pushed back roughly like a month every month. Now, big chunk delay to add up to like a year and a half's worth of delay. And I don't understand why. And then this is kind of just as bad in a way, because every month it getting pushed back by a month and it being consistent every month for the last 6 months is just crazy. And now it's actually had a second delay as well. So in this month. So crazy what's going on here. And I think the worst thing about it is that there are still people out there trying to sort of like, in a way, like defend Dark Horse over this situation. And I'll just open this up to just address some of these kind of points here, because we've talked about them before, and I think there's only so much you can use these as like defenses for what's happening here. Because the most important thing to keep in mind in all of this, that what's happening to especially these two books is on the heavy extreme end of delays. There are delays happening across the board with books, but the majority of them are like a book gets pushed back, say like a month past its initial release date. If you look at a lot of other Dark Horse books, that's kind of what tends to happen. Like the Halo Encyclopedia that recently released, that was originally scheduled for like the month before it actually came out. The Sonic Encyclopedia they put out was again originally scheduled for the month before it actually came out. And there's a lot of things across the board like that. Yes, there are other like individual examples of like bigger delays, but there are not, from what I've seen, too many examples of like, say, a book being delayed by a year and a half, or a book ending up going to have like maybe 11, 12 different release dates over the course of its run. So that's what I think it's very frustrating to me when I see people say, like, I put up a tweet basically complaining a little bit about what's happening with all these delays, and people are like, oh, give them some slack for this. And I'm just like, I gave them slack like 7 delays ago when they delayed it like the first 3, 4, 5 times. When we're talking about delay 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, do you not see the problem here that we can even say that with a straight face, that is something that's actually happened and is somewhat of a regular thing to happen? Because this is now like the 3rd, 4th book that has had this many delays for this much amount of time. So sure, I'm going to factor in like COVID, printing, shipping, materials related to printing kind of crisis that's happening. And that is a thing, we know it is. But even though they've said that this has been a factor, without going into too much detail specifically about Avatar, the inconsistent delays across different books make this feel like an odd reason to explain away everything. So I don't think a simple thing of like, oh, but COVID is a simple way to explain everything away, when you can just look at the list of books and be like, well, what's happening with this book? It was announced like, 2 years ago. It was like, announced like a year and a half ago, and it's still not going to be out for like ages. And it's getting like obviously a few months at the start, then 1 month delays, and now back to like a random 5-month delay. What's the deal there? Like, why is the delays for this book different than delays for this book? Like, this book has always got pretty much delayed into the next month every single time. But then you look at, say, the Book 4 Balance art book 2nd edition and the deluxe, more or less have kept the same date from announcement. I think overall this has been maybe delayed by 1 month overall, or like 2-3 weeks. But for the most part, since it's been announced, it's been able to maintain that window and has had multiple months go by when it hasn't changed date. and looks like it's going to stick to it, because the book 3 book basically did the same thing. Again, it had a couple of weeks delay, which I think you can probably put up to printing issues and stuff like that, but it came out in the general release window of when it was meant to. Similar things here, but obviously maybe slightly more kind of clear cut. This book actually hit its release date. Was announced for February 22nd, came out February 22nd. Had never had another release date. They managed to get it right here. Similarly, the Free Comic Book Day book actually did come out on time. Now, admittedly, other stuff in the background happened, but that's very mysterious and weird, and there's been some shocking communication about like what's actually been going on with that book, and we still don't know what the situation is. So the COVID kind of defense of everything is fine, but I don't think necessarily accounts for the whole idea of but you can keep some books to their exact date, but not others. And it's so weird that you can say that one Avatar book came out the date it was meant to. Another book announced at a similar time has now been pushed back by like 6 months. Across 6 months. How does that make much sense? Like, there's probably reasoning behind the scenes, but guess what? Dark Horse don't communicate with us enough to allow us as fans to understand what those reasons actually are. And this is the other thing of, in a way, like Dark Horse at times being frustrated that the fandom is frustrated of like, yeah, because you have all this like technical information and you know why this is happening, but when you don't communicate that to us, how can you expect us to know and basically give your excuses for you? Which is the kind of big problem in all of this. So the simple fact that they can get books out in the day, and then there are other books that they just can't seem to stick to a date at all, makes this feel very weird. Especially when, wow, what a coincidence that the books that are getting super heavily delayed are all the books that are new content. Reprint books can keep to their dates, but the books that have new content are all over the place. What's the deal there? And again, as far as we're aware, the Chibi comic's done, so there's no problem there. There's only 2 non-reprint stories probably in the Patterns in Time, so what's going on there? And then the other book, Beasts of the Four Nations, is in an even different situation where it's in this weird void state of having been announced but not really announced, and it doesn't actually have a release date. So Dark Horse effectively have a book in nearly every status a book could be in. And it's like, what? So I don't get that. The Avatar Studios excuse, I think, probably explains a lot, but due to a lack of communication from both Avatar Studios and Dark Horse, us as fans, we don't have the information, we don't have the details to actually know why this is actually happening. Just that Avatar Studios is clearly slowing things down. Now, to go into this a little bit more, we assume, based on one official piece of information that they did put out there, which is that the reason we're not getting Avatar comic trilogies anymore is because Mike and Brian requested Dark Horse switch to the one-shot comics, which is why we got the Katara, Toph, and Suki comic. Now, that doesn't explain why we've then gone from them to Chibi comics. And again, the timing feels a bit like, okay, I guess that would have been like maybe like kind of really early Avatar Studios, but also it feels like it's quite a bit before as well. So I don't know what the full situation there is. We assume, again, this is an assumption, this is not confirmed in any way, which is why I don't think you can just use it as the excuse, that we don't get new Avatar comics anymore is because one of the projects is probably an Avatar movie, the Zuko movie that we learned about, and it probably is set somewhere in the region of the comic timeline, and they want the space to be able to do that themselves rather than the comics doing it. But again, it's a weird one in that you just think about that and I'm like, okay, I get it, this stuff takes a long time to plan, but really? It's been like 2 years, like give or take maybe, since like the shift happened with the comics to one-shots. And in that time, you haven't managed to yet decide on what you want to do to open up what the comics can actually do themselves. Is that what we're meant to take from that? And again, most of that's speculation. It's not confirmed. It's just trying to come up with an explanation. And then the other point here, like I said earlier, fans have been patient, and like this kind of thing of like complaining about people complaining on the basis of, you know, just be patient, the books will come out when they come out. We have been patient. Like, last year was not a good year for new content, and this year looks to be even worse. With these delays that have happened, we now have the new content this year from Dark Horse as being the free comic, which we only got half of, and then Patterns in Time, if it maintains its release date, as being November or December, which may or may not happen. And I think it feels like a little bit of a crisis point if we do get to a point where we're talking about the end of the year, and Dark Horse's releases have basically all been reprint books, and then half of a free comic is the only piece of new content that we got. That's bad if that ends up actually happening. I think Patterns in Time just about making it into this year would definitely paper over a lot of the cracks. But there's answers that I think need to come out. And there's just them simply saying, well, COVID, Avatar Studios slowing things down. We're going to need a little bit more than that to kind of explain why we basically went from getting good, interesting, major stories from the comics to just getting nothing, nearly. But yeah, like I say here, how many delays does there need to be to justify impatience? That, like I was saying earlier on, highlighting the extremes of this, if we can't make the point that it's silly that a book has been delayed for the 10th time, or that a book has been delayed by a year and a half, when are you actually allowed to be like, that's dumb? Because I think you have to allow that at a certain point. And I think we're already there with Avatar comics, where they are now. And sure, like I'm talking about, there are reasons behind the scenes as to why this is happening. But guess what? We as fans are not really being brought up to speed on why that's happening. And that's a lack of communication, and that creates this problem with the fan base. That can be solved by them communicating better. Because we're communicating what we kind of want, which is better communication, and we want the books. That's what we as fans are like kind of in a way here to do. They're making the books for us. But in handling them this way, you're making it very, very complicated to do our basic thing as fans. So yeah, books are getting delayed to extremes. Double-digit number of delays, books being delayed by over a year past initial dates. There's only so much slack we can give before things start to get silly, and we are defending any action that these companies take, basically. So yeah, the simple fact is that we as fans are here to find out about the books, buy them and read them, and with all of these delays, they're making it very complicated to actually just keep track of things. And that's why I think a lot of people like the news videos that I do when I talk about the delays. Yes, it can be a little bit repetitive, but I feel the need to, like, every couple of months just be like, hey guys, this is the release schedule. In case like you have been unaware of all these delays that have happened, this is now what's coming out. Because we get situations where books like Beast of the Four Nations go from being it's out in a couple of months to no date for that book. And you know, their books are coming out at completely different times and stuff like that. So there's that. You know, we can try to create excuses for these companies all we want, but that's their job to do. It's their job to communicate with us about stuff that happens, not really ours to create their defenses for them. We know the gist of key factors about why things are happening, but everything else we're in the dark about, and only better communication will actually change this situation. So I did view this one, the delays that happened here, as just being a little bit of, for me, of a kind of breaking point of like it feels indefensible at this point that they need to, I think, almost put out a statement. Because I'm not ready to come out here and be like, I think Dark Horse need to get the franchise taken away from them and a different comic publisher should take up doing Avatar comics. I'm not ready to say that just yet, because I do think there is explanations out there that even if we did have a different publisher, we'd be getting basically the same as we're getting here. So I'm understanding of Dark Horse, their position to a certain degree. but talk about it, say something. And then if the reason they can't say something is because of like Avatar Studios red tape, well then yes, of course we should be more directing some of our dislike towards Avatar Studios and what's gone on there, and just the whole like Viacom Paramount you know, approvals and everything need to be organized in a certain way, because at this point it does feel like these books are ready to go, that theoretically they could probably get these books out sooner than they're saying they can, but they're just trying to release them in like a good release window or something like that, that they're you know, finagling the dates to hit a nice kind of you know, cadence or something like that, because they don't have much content and they need to spread it out a little bit. Because we're getting to the point now where we're going to have to learn about what's actually coming out in 2023. And now, books that are like, you know, this is the biggest thing of all. Books that were originally 2021 are now 2023 books. And you can see the whole idea of clearly there's like a year and a half, 2 years worth of content that there maybe could have been that is actually kind of missing effectively. And so, yeah, Beast of the Four Nations is there, and I'm guessing it'll come out at some point between now and the end of 2023, but who actually knows? Who knows what's going on here? But it does highlight that there are just a lot of things happening in the Avatar fandom right now that are not going super well. Like, the calendar has become a bit of a disaster because it's mostly reprints now, and something has happened there. I mentioned the Free Comic Book Day book a few times, but like that has to be remembered as a bit of a communication disaster for Dark Horse with what happened. And now delays went from, I think, being a thing where like they kind of haven't really stopped, but I wouldn't say things were as like terrible the last kind of few years. Like they were maybe at their worst in the year Team Avatar Tales came out and it had its Chibi Volume 1 kind of run on things. But they haven't been like crazy bad until I think the last year or two, and they've slowly began to build up to it just feeling unacceptably bad at this point in time. So again, I just want to create the point, like, this is a nuanced opinion. I don't hate Dark Horse for everything that's happening. I don't hate Avatar Studios for what's happening. I get it's a combination of factors that are coming together to create this situation, but ultimately most of what we're trying to defend here is just kind of based on assumption and speculation that they are not really confirming all that much when it should be simple, and they're not making it simple. And improvements need to come from their side of things. And I don't think it should be us as fans stop talking about delays or stop complaining and stuff like that. I think it's at the point now where, no, they need to know that this is bad. I think it needs to get to the high-ups at Dark Horse, the high-ups at Avatar Studios, that, like, the fandom are frustrated by what's happening here. And that something needs to happen, something needs to be said. I do honestly feel that that's kind of where it's at. Will we get it? Perhaps not. But that doesn't mean we just need to stop, talking about it and so on. It's important as part of the news to address the fact that so much of what's happening now isn't going like really smoothly, even though it should be. I don't really know what the situation is there. But yeah, without getting into some more repetition, that has been the video. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. 2 delays to the 2 books that we were kind of looking forward to. One book's now out of 2023, the Chibi comic, and Patterns in Time continues its slow and steady march towards also not being in 2023. What's happening here? What are your thoughts on the situation? But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.